trading friends, and welcome back to Forex Focus, brought to you by IG. Taking a look today at the wild price action we've seen in Bitcoin recently, but also over the course of the last several months that have led to 50K. Isn't that crazy? We have an S&P 500 index above 5K, Bitcoin back above 50K, and a US dollar that's actually still holding on to its highs, which might not make a lot of sense for a lot of people, but we're going to dissect all of it here, including correlations of the past and present, to see how we're getting a Bitcoin market at 2-year highs, a stock market at all-time highs, and a US dollar market that's closer to its highs than its lows, that's for sure. But let's start with the Bitcoin piece here, because you see this price action, especially in the last couple of months, a lot of upside, but recently some shakiness, right? This is a market that sold off from its recent highs right after that ETF news came out, a little bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news situation. I think a lot of people expecting that when that news finally was confirmed, the market would then take off, but a classic scenario of, well, all the upside was priced in by the time the news came out, kind of similar to when the Fed will cut or hike rates, and maybe it gets priced in by the time the event actually comes up. They come out and they either cut or hike like was projected, and then the market moves in the other direction because it's already priced in. But anyways, since then, we've seen the bounce back in Bitcoin, especially over the last 2 weeks, now above 50K for the first time since the early part of 2022, right back there to 2-year highs over 50K. And I wanted to correlate this to the US dollar price action, and I'll also tie in interest rates and stocks to the conversation as well. But first, you see here in the euro dollar market, not the same type of price action. You're not seeing this market hit new extremes in one direction or the other, but the dollar over the last several weeks, in the time that Bitcoin has risen to multi-year highs, the dollar market has gained a lot of strength against the euro, but also especially against the Japanese yen, the Australian dollar. It's been US dollar strength pretty much across the board here to kick off 2024, and still hanging in around those highs for USD, even as Bitcoin makes multi-year highs, which might kind of sound wrong to a lot of people, myself included, until I did a little bit more digging. Because you look at the historic price action between US dollar and Bitcoin, and phase out anything in the last couple of months here. Really just look at especially 2021 and especially 2022, when you saw Bitcoin fall significantly and US dollar prices rose to, in some Forex pairs, the highest US dollar prices in 20 or 30 years. When you're talking about the Japanese yen and euro and some of those markets there in 2022, you can see the inverse relationship, right? Bitcoin falling from its highs in the middle part of 21 into the middle and end of 22 as US dollar was rising throughout. And then even in 2023, you can see little instances of Bitcoin rising a little bit and dollar giving up some ground, especially there at the end of 22, at the start of 2023. And then recently, you have both those markets here in 2024 rising together. And yeah, Bitcoin market that's back at $50,000. Last time it was there, US dollar was a lot lower against its major pairs. And so has a lot of people wondering, well, is this the relationship that has to exist? You know, a Bitcoin up, US dollar down, or US dollar up, Bitcoin down, like it's been historically. And let's take a look at the correlations, which tie the two markets together over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. And now it is red, which tells you inverse correlation, negative correlation, whatever you want to call it. One moves one way, the other tends to move the other direction. But a couple of things. It was the most read over the course of 2022 and into 2023. As you might imagine, those were some of the best examples in that last price chart of them moving in opposing directions. But that being said, it wasn't ever a negative 0.5 or 0.6 or 0.7 correlation. And you look at the correlation recently, and it's actually the closest to turning positive that it's been since 2020. And so some of the least correlated price action potentially getting into positive territory. And I want to draw a quick analogy to crude oil or gold here. Just because a lot of people think, oh, well, crude oil, the futures, and here we're looking at the Bitcoin futures, but a lot of crude oil products that are traded, well, that crude is priced in US dollar, and so all else equal, if US dollar rises, then the crude oil that's priced in US dollar should fall. And if US dollar falls, then that crude oil should get a little bit of lift from that USD weakness. And while that's theoretically true, and you could probably see a similar chart here where it's got some negative correlation to it on average over the long term, it's not what runs that market, right? And what we saw during some of the most inverse correlations between Bitcoin and USD was the elephant in the room, high interest rates. And those high interest rates in the US relative to the UK, the Euro area, especially relative to Japan, were driving that US dollar higher, but we're also drying up liquidity in the Bitcoin market and putting some pressure on a lot of the crypto industry. High interest rates, they reduce growth in a lot of ways, right? They contract the economy, and they contracted a lot of liquidity in that market. And so now that interest rates have, for the time being, the central bank has said that they've probably topped out and we're probably looking at rate cuts in the future, Bitcoin has been able to bounce back, see some of that liquidity that they saw prior to the hikes in 2021 and 2022 and 23. And the US dollar maybe should be falling, but there's still some relative strength in the US to Japan. They haven't hiked interest rates at any point, or the Euro area, maybe they're going to cut rates faster than the US. So I only bring this up as an example because you saw this inverse correlation of US dollar and US rates moving higher in 21, 22, and 23, and Bitcoin prices moving lower. But now you don't have to necessarily see Bitcoin prices moving higher and US dollar bottoming out. There is a little bit of that theoretical argument to be had of, oh, well, it's priced in US dollars, so it should move. But again, there are stories that are ongoing within Forex and within crypto that are going to drive those markets. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be one for one moving in one direction or the other. I mean, look at the stock market is trading right now. The S&P is traded new all-time highs in recent trading. And that has had usually a negative correlation to the US dollar market as well. And dollars aren't seeing all-time lows at the same time. And so these markets, while they do have their historical correlations, they don't necessitate where the price action's going. Now, that being said, there is a long-term correlation here that would maybe say at some point, that elephant in the room, interest rates, if U.S. rates collapse down to zero or move lower than expected and Bitcoin sees some upside from that, maybe dollar will see some downside on that point. But I think there's probably a closer correlation between dollars and rates and Bitcoin and rates. And that's probably the middleman here that has the stronger correlation. But I'm sure we'll look into that in the future. But for the time being, 50K Bitcoin and US dollar still near its highs, able to work in synergy. Let's close out by taking a look at where traders are situated in the dollar market right now. And looking at the major pair euro dollar, 58% of IG clients with positions in this market are long euro and short that dollar, thinking that maybe a dollar reversal is coming. Now, of course, this doesn't guarantee or necessitate. The market can go wherever it wants, but it seems as though whether traders are looking at the crypto prices or not, they are thinking, majority at least, that the U.S. dollar could see a reversal. We'll see what is to come if 55 or 60K in Bitcoin is next, or they're due for a reversal, and what it all means for the U.S. dollar market and correlations and everything else in the near future. Thanks for watching.